It's 5:30 on Wednesday, February 16th, and I call to order this regular Board of Education meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District Board of Education. Ms. Stoikoi, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Coco? Here. Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Item B, agenda, motion to approve the agenda. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the agenda of the February 16th, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of a consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, treasurer, or superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Coco? Aye. Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Welcome to our top Tigers and their families, our high school artists that we'll be honoring tonight, and to our staff members, part of our book study presentation. Welcome to all of you. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. Informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the agenda, they must notify the superintendent and/or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, comments will include the name and address of the individual and be limited to 3 minutes. In addition, in public session, the board will not hear complaints about school personnel nor against any person connected with the school system. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen behind you. And for your convenience, and if you would like, hard copies of the agenda are provided on the table near the entrance. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the board is March 2nd, 2022, here at the auditorium at 5:30 p.m. A Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for tomorrow in the Board of Education meeting room at 431 Stowe Avenue at 9 a.m. There's also a 612 construction meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library. A special Board of Education meeting is scheduled for February 18th at the Summit Educational Service Center, 410 Washington Avenue at 1 p.m. And a Business Advisory Council meeting is scheduled for February 22nd, 2022 at the Board of Education meeting room, 431 Stowe Avenue at 8 a.m. And now for our Pledge of Allegiance and Positive Reflections, Mr. Harris.
Please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, for my positive reflection this evening, I chose a man who has done just as much on the basketball court for students in the classroom, Lebron James. My personal opinion, I'd say he's the GOAT. Ask me to play, I'll play. Ask me to shoot, I'll shoot. Ask me to pass, I'll pass. Ask me to steal, block out, sacrifice, lead, dominate, anything. But it's not what you ask of me, it's what I ask of myself.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Just don't ask me to catch anything.
Keep that in mind.
Item D, presentations. Our first presentation is our 2022 Northeast Central Ohio Scholastic Art Competition. Dr. Cruz? Don't see her.
So I have this opportunity to congratulate 2 of our students for winning a very prestigious award. They were recognized by our Northeast Ohio Scholastic Art Competition. And I want to bring up Anna Leone and Lucy Hanselman. see.
Are they attached to the, are they in the present attached to the?
No, I had shared them. We'll see what happens.
So sorry.
That's okay. I'll see if I can get them up later. So anyway, congratulations to Lucy and Anna, who they were recognized for their artwork in this art competition. The judges awarded gold keys to the entries. They only awarded them to 14 out of the 64 portfolio entries. They awarded silver and gold keys to 277 of the 2,100 individual entries. So we have Anna, who was awarded 3 gold keys, 2 silver keys, and also 3 honorable mentions for her painting and her color pencil artwork. So congratulations to Anna. And Lucy was awarded 1 gold key for her glass mosaic window and an honorable mention for her clay sculpture. In addition, I want to comment that Anna's 4-foot by 4-foot painting entitled The Forest of Art was nominated for the American Vision Award. Only 5 total artworks were selected for this honor. These works will go on to the national competition in New York later this year. And Anna was also recognized and awarded the Robert Spanbauer Memorial Award from the Akron Society of Artists. They send a panel of artists and they select only 1 student each year, and Anna was honored to be their selection for this year, 2022. Anna's painting was also selected as the featured artwork for this year's regional catalog cover and remained on display for that event. Her work was really, truly the star of the show. So we are so proud and honored, and congratulations to both of you. We expect to see your artwork out and about, and congratulations. Thank you.
Next up, presentation number 2, Top Tigers recognition. Mr. Shabady.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. This is always the, I believe it's the highlight of the meeting. We always hear all the negatives out there, but this is a chance to see some really great kids that are doing some unbelievable things, and really the future leaders in our community. So it's an honor to recognize them. Before I do that, I'm going to ask Mr. Gomez, our school board president, and also the board member who represents the board at the Foundation and Alumni Association, and he's going to come up and tell you a little bit about that organization and how we make this award possible. So, Mr. Gomez.
So our Cuyahoga Falls Schools Foundation and Alumni Association was founded by one of our former superintendents, Dr. Harold Wilson, with 1 scholarship. And this year we're going to give over 50 scholarships to graduating seniors. And then the last 7 years alone, our foundation has given over $1 million worth of scholarships to graduating seniors here at Cuyahoga Falls High School. We're very proud of the work that we do to support our students and to our future alumni. So part of that is that we sponsor the Top Tiger Award. You're going to get a bag with various things. So we'd like to thank some of our sponsors, Donato's Pizza, Young Screen Printing, Dietz's Florist that you'll get a flower from. But all the work that the Foundation Alumni Association does is because of our members. And if you'd like to know more about what we do, we have these really beautiful little flyers with information. Stop on by my seat on your way out. I'd be happy to give you one. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Cruz, would you help me with the awards, please? And after we're finished, parents and students, if you want to leave at that time, you're more than welcome to do that, and probably can get some ice cream from your parents or something on the way out of here. So, I'm going to call your name. Please come up, and I'll say a few words about you, and we'll get you some nice gifts here to go. And as Mr. Gomez says, I think we have a T-shirt coming for you as well down the road here. We'll make sure you get that. First up is Mackenzie Miller from Bolick Middle School. Mackenzie, are you here? Come on up, Mackenzie. Mackenzie is a 8th grade student at Bolick Middle School as an individual that consistently demonstrates top Tiger behaviors and characteristics at school and within our Black Tiger family. She was nominated by Mrs. Kuzarski and Mrs. Alio for the month of January. Mackenzie is a great asset to the classroom and Bolick Middle School. She is always attentive in class and is accepting of suggestions made to her work. Teachers report that Mackenzie is a pleasure to have in class and strives to meet her full potential. Mackenzie plays softball for the Akron Racers and would like to continue playing. After high school, Mackenzie wants to go to college and major in psychology. Mackenzie makes our job as educators more rewarding. She deserves recognition for her accomplishments. Congratulations, Mackenzie. Next from Bolick Middle School, Vuk Kanarik. Vuk, are you here? There you go. Nominated by Mrs. Alio and Mrs. Kazarski for the month of January 2022. Vuk is doing an amazing job as an 8th grade learner at Bolick Middle School. He is attentive, well-behaved, and quite interested in all of his classes. He contributes in a positive and upbeat manner. His homework has been completed on time and completed well. He does utilize teacher feedback to improve the content of his writing. Vuk works hard and has earned all A's in all of his classes this year. Vuk is interested in attending his dream college, the Ohio State University, and he currently hopes to study architecture. Outside of school, Vuk enjoys video games, music, and being with family and friends. Vuk makes our jobs as educators much more rewarding. Vuk is a Cuyahoga Falls top tiger every day as he follows Black Tiger Pride at school and outside of school. Thank you, Vuk. Congratulations. Next, from Roberts Middle School, Particia Ray. At Roberts Middle School, as an 8th grade student at Roberts Middle School, she is an individual that consistently demonstrates top tiger behaviors and characteristics at school and within our Black Tiger family. She was nominated by Mrs. Hamilton for the month of January. Particia is one of those students that tries to stay under the radar. According to Mrs. Hamilton, Particia comes to school with a quiet demeanor and easy smile, but there is a determination about her that shines through. As a student in class, Particia is sweet and always willing to help her classmates on any given day. Her efforts haven't gone unnoticed as Particia has earned nearly straight A's for both quarter 1 and quarter 2. Particia is a fantastic example of what a top tiger is with her hard work, ethic, and determination to do well. But perhaps what is even more important is her enormous heart. Thank you, Particia, for being our top tiger. Congratulations. Next, and this is an honor for me because I got a chance to work with this young man's mother for many years, Brady Burns. Brady, Roberts Middle School, student in 6th grade. As an individual at Roberts Middle School, he consistently demonstrates top tiger behaviors and characteristics at school and within our Black Tiger family. Nominated by 6th grade teachers for the month of January 2022. According to our 6th grade teachers, Brady is a bright spot in everyone's day. He takes pride in everything he does, including his work in the classroom, earning straight A's for quarter 2. His teachers appreciate Brady's ability to work with anyone he is asked to do so with while ensuring the work gets done. He always has a pleasant demeanor and is typically happy, which is not always common with middle schoolers. Those of you who have middle schoolers know that. We sincerely appreciate Brady's kindness towards others and his sheer determination to just be a great kid. He represents his family well, and his school could not be more proud. Thank you for being our top tiger. Congratulations, Brady. From Cuyahoga Falls High School, Elena Matheny. Is Elena here? Come on up. Nominated by Mrs. Bentley, Mr. Lambright, Mr. Schofield, and Mr. Zerlak, the whole HPE department. That's pretty impressive. Elena Matheny exemplifies what it means to be a Black Tiger. She is courteous and respectful student, always ready to help out another student or teacher. Elena was interested in taking the class Sports Medicine 2 during her senior year to continue her knowledge of sports medicine. from Sports Medicine 1. When schedules came out for the semester, she realized that there was no Sports Medicine 2 class being taught fall or spring semester. She reached out to Mr. Zerlak and Mrs. Bentley to see if there was anything she could do to advocate for Sports Medicine 2 in the spring semester. Mrs. Bogdan encouraged Elena to petition her classmates to gauge interest. She generated enough interest among her peers that Sports Medicine 2 is now being offered this spring. This would not have been possible without Elena's diligence and personal effort in this endeavor. Congratulations, Elena. Last but not least, Alexander McCune. Is Alexander here? Alexander is a student in the 12th grade at Cuyahoga Falls High School. He was nominated by Mrs. Bentley, Mr. Lambright, Mr. Scalfield, and Mr. Zerlak, the HPE department. Alex McCune exemplifies what it means to be a black tiger. He is responsible and a dedicated student who is always looking to help others. In an effort to develop employability skills and support his community, Alex volunteers weekly at Good Neighbors in Cuyahoga Falls and has completed volunteer job training programs at the Summit ESC and Goodwill. He also helps to maintain the Cuyahoga Falls High School Fresh Farm and the Futures Greenhouse. He is bright, funny, and creative student who has come a long way since first enrolling at Cuyahoga Falls High School. Alex is looking forward to graduating this May and is excited to join the workforce. Congratulations, Alex. Thank you. I just want to mention before all the parents leave, after a lot of data and analysis and working with a lot of the area schools, we have decided that February 22nd, the day after President's Day, we will be going to a mask optional school district. We want to thank all of the parents and students that have cooperated during this difficult pandemic. But our numbers, we were looking for 2 weeks of decline. We've had 3 straight weeks of rapid decline. In the last week, we've had 0 cases. We've had 1 case. So we think this is the time to move forward. We do want people to understand that the mask mandate on the buses is still enforced. That is a federal mandate. That expires March 18th. We anticipate that will expire at that time. So again, mask optional beginning the day after President's Day. We know that'll make a lot of people happy. We know it'll probably make a lot of people sad. But working together, we think we can keep this under control. We certainly reserve the right, should we have a breakout somewhere, and the health department defines a breakout of 3 people from a small group like a sports team or a classroom to bring the mask mandate back if needed. But we again just want to thank people for their cooperation. We believe the masks help keep our schools open after the holidays. We also want to encourage people that have not been vaccinated to do get vaccinated so we can keep these schools open. But again, we just want to say thank you for cooperating through this very difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you to all our top Tigers and our amazing artists. If you'd like to leave, this is a great time to do that. And go have that ice cream or celebratory dinner. Thanks for being here.
Congratulations.
Next up is presentation number 3, book study group 2, Mr. Bugatti and
Company.
Folk.
Visual aid.
All right, we are at the end of the presentation. Can we go back to the beginning?
I just recall Group 1 being a little more organized, but that was just, you know, what I recall.
We didn't have to worry about technology, we just were on it. Here we go.
So,
We wanted to provide some comic relief, so this way everybody got laughing, it was more comfortable.
so we are Team 2, here to talk a little bit about our experiences, things we've learned through the book study, and then how we've been able to really apply the things that we read about and talked about in our small groups. So before we get started, I know we have some new board members, and for the community members, we'll just kind of go through and introduce ourselves and our role in the district. So I'm Holly Merkel, I'm the coordinator of Wellness and Success.
My name is Kara Walter, I'm the principal at Bullock.
I'm Joe Bagatti, the Director of Business and Operations.
AJ Harris, I'm a board member.
Margie Johnson, I'm the Transportation Supervisor.
Jennifer Scala, principal at DeWitt Elementary.
Jason Smith, one of the associate principals at Cuyahoga Falls High School.
All right, so we are Team 2. We chose to focus on Chapter 4 of the book. We connected with a lot of the ideas that were throughout the book, but really felt like the things in Chapter 4 we've been able to apply in our lives both professionally and personally, so we hope to kind of share some of those with you this evening. If I can, there we go. So we pulled this quote from Chapter 4 just to kind of help frame our discussion and what we're going to kind of share with you this evening. So the quote is, "Relationship work, paradoxically, is a solitary project. It may feel like growing a self. It is not necessary, important, or even possible to work on the other person." I think I'm pushing the wrong buttons here. Someone help me out to the next slide. Thank you. All right, one more slide. Thank you. So Chapter 4 has 3 major themes. So this slide, we're just going to kind of introduce them to you, and then we're going to break off and each kind of share how we've been able to use these themes throughout our life and work as well. So the first theme is observe whether your default tendency is toward too much distance or too much closeness. Theme 2 is understand that a leader is only able to exert positive influence on a system to which she or he is connected. And theme 3 is work on maintaining a healthy balance between being close enough to influence, yet distant, can't talk tonight, yet distant enough to lead. So I'm going to talk about theme 1. We could go to the next slide. We onboarded 2 new school social workers this year, and I really could have applied all 3 of those. I could have stood up here and talked about all 3, but I chose theme 1 because I really felt like as we started to onboard them, this really helped give me a framework for how to find that balance between being too close or too far. So the book really talks about, there's sort of a continuum of being really too close to those people that you lead versus being too far away. In both of those extremes, you can't really be effective because you're either too close personally or you're not close enough. And so you really reduce your effectiveness in being a leader if you're in the extremes. So really the book challenges you to really figure out how to find that balance in between. So as we brought on the 2 new social workers, it was this, I guess my default is maybe too close. And so you want to help people feel like they're part of our Black Tiger family, that they're supported, that we're here for them. So it really helped me understand how to do that in a way that you don't become enmeshed and lack boundaries, but also not being too aloof, that they don't feel like they can call you if they need something or that you're here for them for whatever they need. So that's how I've been able to apply theme 1. It was, again, like perfect timing as we brought on 2 new staff members to help me kind of frame how to support them and be a good leader. So I'm going to pass.
Really about theme 2. Yeah. Excellent. Yes, I am had theme 2. As you know, I'm the new principal at DeWitt Elementary, and so being a new leader, I truly believe that building strong relationships in those first few years is vital to having that positive environment that we're looking for. So really being intentional when it comes to connecting and building those relationships by creating just a calm and positive interactions with the staff, teachers, students, and families that I lead. To do that, I really make sure that I'm centered and got a lot of those ideas from the text as well. So even if a student or family is coming with a difficult situation, something that I might feel anxious about, being mindful of that and exuding that calmness that we would like to have for our students to bring that positive environment for our students and staff, and being intentional in those interactions. So to do that, I really make sure that I have daily check-ins with my teachers, staff, and students. I make sure that I visit each one of their classrooms every single day and have a check-in with each staff member to ask if there's anything they need or anything I can do. To do that, I'm intentionally trying to create those positive relationships and have an opportunity to listen to them. And when I'm doing that, I'm very mindful of my being centered, less anxious, and having a quality interaction with them. Those are all ideas that were brought on with Theme 2.
I'm also Theme 2. And I'm AJ Harris. What was so unique about this experience for me is that I was able to get to know these folks before I was even a member of the district, before I was elected. So my perspective comes from my full-time job as a job developer, helping high school kids and adults with disabilities find work throughout Summit County. So I was recently appointed into a new supervisory role where I oversee a number of job developers and job coaches on top of multiple clients. I knew going into a new role that I'd continue to be connected with these folks I work with as an overall system. But that connection needed to change, just as my role did. Before, my position only required contact with clients and a few job coaches. Now I needed to keep our entire system in Summit County connected. That includes employers, school counselors, compacts, employment agencies, staff, clients, etc. I can keep going, the list is long. Making things a bit harder, our company doesn't operate from a traditional office. We all work from our home offices, libraries, school conference rooms, and sometimes restaurants. So it was going to be important for me to maintain and build connection using digital means. Weekly, if not daily, Zoom chats, phone calls, emails, emailing mindfully, as the book mentions, that is, and text messages are my way of keeping connected with my staff. I'm mindful of my check-ins, making sure that I'm not micromanaging or helicoptering over their work. I also strive to keep the system's rules in place as part of that connection. Assuring there's no overlap in communication between job coach and employer or client, making sure they're clear on how that line of communication should work. Lastly, part of this new role is making sure my own anxieties aren't impacting the balance of the overall system. I'm now required to be mindful of the anxiety that might be coming from staff and find ways to calmly deal with those challenges when presented with them. As the book points out, it's important to be mindful and intentional about the quality of your presence, maintaining a centered, less anxious presence, and to recenter in our communications.
All right, I'm going to introduce the third theme. So, as was mentioned before, there are a lot of themes in this chapter and really throughout the book that did resonate with everything that we do. And one of the great things about this whole experience is having the opportunity to work with the administrative team, the board members of our Board of Education in a much closer fashion, which we don't typically do. And that's been a great experience just to get to know everybody. And there's a lot of really great ideas and brilliant minds that we really got to talk amongst ourselves, and it was a great opportunity. So this third theme, this idea of being close enough to influence yet distant enough to lead, I really felt kind of hit home with me. This is certainly not unique to me, but as somebody who has actually had the opportunity and the privilege to work in a few different roles within not just the district, but specifically the high school. Started as teaching math for a number of years at the high school, got to be department chair, and then now as an associate principal. You develop a lot of relationships with your peers and your coworkers along the way, and then you transfer from the role of being a peer to being an administrator, and those relationships do have to change. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book was there's a number of stories that were shared, and one of the stories in particular talked about an individual who kind of was in a very similar situation. Worked with peers, was kind of plucked from that and asked to work in a leadership role. And just some of the trials and tribulations that individual went through. And for me, one of the things that I was very fortunate with, and the book kind of highlights this, is having an excellent support staff, people around you. I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of really good administrators that are a strong support for me, and that kind of helped me work on those relationships. And there's a great high school staff that those relationships that I've built over the last 7, 8, 9 years were able to evolve into still being close enough, like as the theme suggests, close enough to influence, but distance now enough to lead. And I'm really grateful for the intentional conversations that I've had, the time that I've put in, and the other staff members have put in with me to make sure that those do evolve and they are appropriate, and those relationships aren't fractured, they're just slightly different now. So, really appreciate that.
So, as everyone else has stated, it's been really nice getting to know a lot of the administrators on a closer level. I mean, I've worked with many of them for 6 years and just got to know some of them during this book study. I, too, in theme 3, which was staying close enough to influence yet distant enough to lead. So as you can imagine, in the transportation department, there's a lot of colorful personalities, strong personalities. So sometimes it is very easy to get drug into toxic triangles. So that's a chapter, some of what we read in this book is toxic triangles and trying to distance yourself from those. I also did some coaching with John Moyer on leadership. So I was able to put two things at work here with the coaching and through this book, and repositioning in toxic triangles. I've had a specific driver and a monitor who weren't getting along and they were butting heads, and I was able to bring them in and try to distance myself, yet listen to both sides, stay out of it, and pretty much let them handle and come to their own reckoning, so that they could get along, and it worked out wonderfully. The driver actually came to me later and said it was one of the best meetings she's ever been in. They appreciated it, and it really worked. And they are still getting along today, so that's really a win.
Hello. So I think the thing that I would like to share is that all of the colleagues and all of the discussion that we had, they really helped me be reflective as a new principal about the things that are going on in my building and who I am. Most of you that know me know I kind of have a strong personality. I like to talk. So I think my colleagues have really helped me learn how to be reflective and think about how close I am with my staff, but how to also be distant. And I, like Jen, check in with my staff pretty much every morning. I kind of have my morning routine, check in with the kids, say good morning, walk around as the bell rings, stop in at their classrooms. I try really hard to know their pet names, their kids' names, their husbands' names, what's going on with their staff. And I feel like that's been something I've been pretty good at up to now, but this book has really helped me learn that by challenging the staff and when they come to me with problems, helping them solve their own problem, that distance is okay. And I don't even know if I really love the word distance. I think it's just building those relationships to help the staff really engage in their strengths and capitalize on what they have to offer. So I think that's been good because I've really learned how to balance with different people, have different relationships, and my closeness and my distance, if you want to use that word, they can all be positive. So, you know, sometimes you think that distance isn't always good, but I've really learned through this reading that that distance can be good if you balance them. So I think that's what I got out of it. I, like many other people, overall the book offered me so many things, and I even continue to go back and reread chapters, and my coaching with John Moyer has really helped me just look at my role as a principal differently. So I think that I have enjoyed this time with my colleagues and the reading of the text. So thank you all for setting this up and organizing it, because it's been very positive.
Good evening, everyone. As you could see, we had a slideshow, but the first group had a nice prop, and it was an iceberg. Well, I entered into negotiations to try to rent that, but our team did not have the financial means to rent that prop. So Mrs. McClure, she's a tough negotiator. She really, really is. So, but I'd like to take something, Miss White reads articles and she reads things to us, and I'm going to take a little piece of that. I'm going to read from the book. I was not in any one of the themes. I was still in the chapter, but the part that I will tell you a story about is the pursuit distancing patterns. But to read from the book here, the reciprocal nature of all relationships guarantees that whenever a leader is in pursuit of another person or group, especially when his or her pursuit is characterized by a high degree of emotional intensity, the person or group automatically and instinctively begins to flee. So I had this with my son. Some of you know I have a 15-year-old son who started high school this year. We were very, very close, and we spent a lot of time together. So at the beginning of the school year, he's a good student, but not quite good enough for dad. So there's a conflict there, right? So I would ask him about tutors, and I would ask him about many, many different things, how he's getting help at school. Why did you only get 92% on this test? And so I finally, through the coaching of Mr. Moyer and the leadership coaching with him, I asked him, I said, what can I do more of or less of to help you become a better student and a better athlete? Because he's a good athlete, he's a golfer. And so I gave him a couple weeks to think about it. And the first question he answered was, as far as education goes, he wrote down, Dad, I've got this. I don't need you talking to me every day about, did I have a tutor? Do I need a tutor? I don't need you, wondering why I only got a 92. I've got this, Dad. Just let me do this. And when it came to athletics, he said to me, I need you to stay on top of me. Dad, I get lazy sometimes. I need you to stay on top of me. Well, his grade point average has jumped over a half a grade level, and he was already a pretty good student. But by me distancing from him and not chasing him, constantly chasing him about what are you doing tomorrow? What are you going to do next week? How are you going to prepare for that test? He actually has taken on the role himself to make sure that he's prepared, to make sure his test scores are where they need to be, to make sure all of that happens. Because my son still knows two things. He knows what the expectations are, and he knows if you don't meet those expectations, there's consequences. I did not need to tell him every day. So our relationship, a lot less turmoil in it when it comes to school. Athletics, he grins and bears it when I make him go downstairs and hit golf balls or whatever the case may be. But this is a win for our family, and I believe this is the same type of practice I'd like to have, and I have been practicing with our employees. With the distancing is okay, letting them handle what they need to handle, and most importantly, setting those expectations and letting them know as long as those expectations are met, consequences there are no consequences. So this is really has been a win for my son and I, for my family, and I hope more of this book I'll be able to practice in the coming years for everybody in the district. Do we have any questions or anything? I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our true leader was Rachel Seifert. Unfortunately, Dr. Rachel Seifert. Unfortunately, she's not feeling well today, so she could not be here. I really wish she was because she's really good at speaking. So I would be remiss if I did not mention that she was also part of this wonderful team. And to work with these individuals back here, it was just, you could sit in a room. We actually end up going into a room, and when we talked about these topics in the book, it was so refreshing that we we were all able to say what we felt, and everybody was able to do that in the room, and we all listened, and I want to thank my team members for being so wonderful, and much appreciated. Any questions? No?
Thank you. Well, I think, when we did the book study for the first time last year, our number one feedback was, what book are we doing next year? We got to do this again, because we all gain so much from taking time to actually get to know one another, and it makes us stronger leaders, all of us, the day-to-day leaders, and then those of us on the board. And it's helped me even because sometimes people like to come to us with complaints, and I'm not discouraging that, but sometimes people say something, and I'll say, you know what? I know that principal. Like, I've had dinner, at, I think you need to give them another chance. Because, I know that person. I've got to know who they are as a person. And I think your perception of how they are in that situation isn't who they want to be. So give them another chance. So it's been so valuable. And so if people have books for next year, time is coming soon that we'll have to think about that. So if people have ideas, start thinking. And I did want to take a moment because we don't get Margie Johnson here very often. But I think anyone who's read the news has seen about the difficulties that school buses and school bus drivers, and we are so fortunate to have Margie Johnson leading our transportation department. We have not had to cancel school once this year because of transportation. And particularly, I know the last 2 weeks were particularly challenging. She was out there picking kids up, getting them home while doing all of her other duties. So if we could just thank her for what she does.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And then group 3, you'll want to get together in the next month. You'll be at the second meeting in March.
Great job. Way to go. Nice job. Go get it. Now time for ice cream. That's fine.
Next
Let's go
up
with
is presentation number 4, ESSER 3 presentation. Ms. Stoykoy. You all don't, administrators don't have to sit through this if you don't want to. What? It's okay. You can
You should go get us ice cream. Save yourselves.
Okay, so we're gonna go over ESSER 3. You really can leave. It will hurt my feelings, but it's all right. We'll talk about it later. So first of all, it's the Winter Olympics. All right, everybody's watching, and I saw this picture, and I just thought, it's so weird I haven't seen this. If I can get it to go. Is this working? Not working. So it is hard to see. This is not my best work. This was on the fly. But Ryan and Joe are part of the curling team.
Right there on the end.
You're on the end there, Joe.
Nice.
Just
Joe's
stunned.
the team captain, obviously.
Yeah, it's on there. Yeah, and this is true. They do just look like a group of dads that wanted to get away, and here we are at the Olympics doing curling. Thought that was it. I wanted to highlight that, Joe. I didn't want it to go by without, Yeah, I sure can. I'll do better work before I send it to you. That was on the fly. That came to me at the end. Okay. So, oh, did I just turn something off? Is that me?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Now it works. I'll stop pushing buttons. And I'll just let someone else do it.
This is a great presentation.
I know. Riveting. That was it. It was Joe and Ryan. For curling.
we're back. Okay, so we can go on to the next slide after that. There we go. Okay. All right, so a little background. SR3 is our third set of official ESSER funds. We've had some other little funds here and there from the state or Summit County. ESSER3 is the third round that we received from the federal government. And so I just wanted to kind of briefly go over the authorized activities and highlight some of the differences between ESSER3 and the first two rounds of ESSER. So authorized activities for ESSER3 funds, and I'm not going to read all these, but basically it's any activity that was already covered under other federal grants we have, so our special education, Title I, all those kinds of things. Coordinate preparedness and response efforts. LEA it would be the district. Providing principals and other school leaders with resources necessary to address the needs of their school. Addressing the unique needs of low-income students, students with disability, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, and students experiencing homelessness and foster youth. Develop and implement procedures and systems to improve the preparedness and response efforts, and training and PD for staff on sanitation and minimizing spread of infectious diseases. Lists keep going. Obviously, supplies to clean and sanitize facilities, planning for and coordinating during long-term closures, so meals, remote technology, all of those things. Purchasing technology, mental health services, activities related to summer learning, after-school programs, kind of, you can see all that, it kind of reiterates what some of the other ones have mentioned, and any other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of services in the local education agencies, which is the district, and to continue to employ existing staff. Finally, we can go to the next one. School facility and repairs and improvements. If you recall, we did the bipolar air ionization. We did that mostly with our ESSER2 funds, but some with partial out of ESSER3. Maintenance, inspection, testing to improve indoor air quality. That's where that would fall under in school facilities. And addressing learning loss was a big one when they came out with ESSER3, that they wanted districts to address by all the number of things that they have listed there. So we can go on to the next one. I know it's not, Ozark. Who watches Ozark? It's the best show ever. And I really, I love Ruth. She swears a lot, so there's not a lot of slides that could go in here that would have been appropriate. All right, so we can go on to the next one. So we received a little bit over $5 million in our Sr3 allocation. They were awarded to districts based on your total Title I funds each entity receives. It does not contain a supplanting prohibition that, and neither did ESSER 1 or ESSER 2. And what that means basically is with our federal funds that we receive regularly, we are not allowed to use that money to replace something that we normally pay for out of general funds. So the easiest example is, let's say we have a second grade teacher. We've been paying for her out of our local funds or the funds from the state. I can't then the next year decide I'm going to take her out of a federal fund. It needs to be some sort of an addition, improvement to a program, things like that. However, with ESSER, because of the nature of the grant and the reason they were giving it, we were allowed to do that. So we could say, hey, we've lost money, we've had a decrease from the state, we need to pay for these, 4 second grade teachers. In order to keep them employed, we got to pay for them out of this. That was allowable. And they could be dated back to March 13th, 2020, and they go through September 30th of 2024. So when we initially received this, it was about a 3-year gap, because we received this kind of end of 2020, beginning of 2021, when that happened. And In this round, the funds were directly provided to our non-publics. Therefore, no equitable services were required. And what that means is there are 4 non-publics that reside within our district boundary lines. And in our typical federal funds, we are responsible for providing equitable services. So they have a percentage of each of our grants that are awarded federally. We have to provide services for those if they opt in. They don't have to, but if they opt in, we have a requirement to provide equitable services. And in the first round of ESSER 1, that was in place. So we were responsible for facilitating those non-publics and their ESSER 1 funds. ESSER 2 and 3, they funded those non-publics directly and kind of kept us out of the loop, which made me happy. Some new requirements with ESSER 3, ESSER 1 and 2. Didn't really have much in the way of, other than how we normally run our federal grants. It's all within ODE, and we have to go in and kind of give them our whole plan and our budget and give them the details to the budget, and they go through a review process and approve it. And then we spend the money. I should point that out. These are grants that we weren't given $5 million and it's sitting in the bank somewhere. We were given that budget. As we spend the funds, then we request to be reimbursed with that money. So we don't just have it, it's all in an approved plan, and then at times they ask to see all the expenditures to make sure that we're basically doing what we said and what they've approved. ESSER 3 added a few new things in it that involved the public and involved a couple other things. So one was a safe return of in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. And so this basically stated that within 30 days of receipt of the funds, which would have been when they kind of dropped our allocation into the system, that we had to make this safe return of in-person instruction plan, continuity of service available on our website to the public, and offer a spot where they could also offer their public input. So we have that housed in our little COVID, the separate section. You will see a continuity of services plan. You click on that, it'll show everything, it'll break it down. At the bottom, there's a Google form where if you wanted to put your input in on that, on how it's being spent, your thoughts, that's there and that's available. You can go to the next one. The second portion, and so that was kind of more of the curriculum and student-centered side. On the financial side, we also needed to come up with an ARP ESSER plan. And so we had to submit that to the state, also make it publicly available. There is a link in that same document I just spoke about that links to the budget that you'll see. And so that needed to be on the website and have a plan. We had to make that available by August 20th of 2021. And then we must periodically, but no less frequently than every 6 months, review and as appropriate revise its plan. So we made a commitment to do this similar to the emergency levy funds. We do that once every 6 months, kind of give the update on what we've budgeted, where we're at. That Google form is out there at all times for anyone to put their input on. Same thing at public meetings is the same thing. We also have a newer allocation that I'm not going to get into a whole lot because we haven't done anything with it yet, which is a ESSER 3, but it's specifically for special education. That is also out on the budget. I told you there's a link to the budget. There are 2 tabs. One is ESSER 3, and one you can see is for the separate special education portion. So as we go on and we keep reviewing this, that will be included. We just have not, it's not even been approved by ODE yet, our full budget and spending plan.
So that's not included in the
It's
number.
not, because
Okay.
it's not. It will be at future dates, but that just got dropped in later within the last couple months or so. And we're working to get it approved through ODE, and then we'll be able to start spending those funds. And so we thought, yeah, there's one. I got her in one. I suppose that can work. So that's what we did. The next few slides, I'm just gonna go through kind of what our budget is, and then where we're at as of kind of right now in time. So, salary and benefits, and these different sections are kind of how they're broken down budget-wise in ODE and how we have to put them in. So that's why you see them like this. So salaries and benefits. The one thing we have coming out of that, we have a literacy specialist that was added this year. We actually have two, but you'll see the other one in another place. That was added this year to assist with the literacy pilots that were at our two buildings that we've had other presentations about before. So there are two different people, each one at one building. And so you see her salary and the benefits associated with that are in for the next 3 years for those budgets. She is part of the teachers union, so it's all based on what their negotiated contract rate is. So that's the budget. This is kind of what we've spent so far to date. You can see kind of the total budget. That's the total of all 3 years, and where we're at. So it's not like it's a lot right now. This is just, she's only been getting paid since September. So that is where we're at with that and what remains. The next section would be our purchase services. This was the budget that was originally determined. YMCA after school program, so we expanded our after school program that the Y runs in our buildings. These were the budgeted amounts for that program. We added 2 social workers. Some of these you'll see that like there's nothing in this year's budget, and that's because there's an overlap kind of between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. So this year, social workers and the other literacy specialists were paid out of ESSER funds. It's just not ESSER 3, it was ESSER 2. So next year they will move, because we will no longer have the funds in ESSER 2. They will move to be paid for out of ESSER 3. So that's why you only see them in the last 2 years. So we've added both of those. The reason the literacy specialist is different, and you're asking why isn't one under salaries, why are they under purchase services? The social workers and our literacy specialists here we're contracted with the ESC. So we don't pay them directly through our payroll. They are actually hired by the ESC, and then they work here in our district. So we pay the ESC, they bill us for those employees. So far, this year we've spent about $60,000 on the YMCA after school program. You can see we haven't had any expenses this year in ESSER 3 for the others, because they're still being paid for out of ESSER 2. And the next one's probably the biggest. So this was the supplies budget. So there were a lot of different things in here, and I'll start with this year. So special services, some additional supplies for some of our special education students. Literacy resources, K-5, so we used ESSER 2 for that literacy pilot to kind of help with those students. Learning loss was part of that. The summer programs. That is the cost for the other 4 buildings that's budgeted to expand those to the other 4 buildings next year. ELA resources at 612 for $300,000. Just some general instructional resources. There were some replacements that were needed in the buildings after kids coming back and forth and being remote, not being remote, maybe some things not necessarily being returned all the time there. Electronic subscriptions, and you'll see that kind of going out for the 3-year period. Those were our subscriptions we entered into, such as Edmentum, MobiMax. What's the other one? I can't think of off the top of my head. There's another one that we've used to kind of enhance, or when the kids had to go remote and different things, that we were able to access those things. Class fees, if you recall, for both K-5 and 612, this year we waived all class fees, the student fees, other than the technology fee and any other career tech fees. And so we use SR3 to absorb that cost that would normally be paid for by the students. And we have that tentatively, we've approved it for this year, and we had intentions of going forward, but approving it on a year-by-year basis, just kind of seeing where we are. But budget-wise, we have it built in for the next 2 years as well. And then you can see science and math resources, and also in next year's budget. So there's about $750,000 there. And in 24, that last year, you can kind of just see it's kind of those annual subscriptions and fees that we have budgeted in there. I want to say, like, this is not a set in stone. This was kind of when this came out, we had to budget all $5 million as if we were going to spend it this year. This is subject to have some changes. Every year, we're going to be required to go in and redo the budget with whatever money's remaining, just like we do all of our other funds. So at the end of this year, they'll say, you have $4 million left over, and we're going to have to go, and it wipes everything out. We're going to go back from scratch and say, okay, what are we thinking is really realistic, or what do we need? Obviously, things have changed with what we need or thought we might need back then. So each year will kind of be a process. So it may not stick exactly to this, which is why we kind of tried to keep it a little general. A lot of those larger amounts, we were looking at updated textbooks for students and different things like that would help them. But again, the timetables of the different committees and as well, and when they're ready to come forward with a proposal for any of these new textbooks, it's a varying situation. So, you know, right now that's what we have in there that's been approved. Actually, you can go to the next one. Supplies. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a little bit more on budget there. So, Go Guardian is another one. Again, paid out of ESSER2 this year, budgeted for the next 2 years. And then finally, obviously, custodial supplies we've had to increase over the past few years, and we have also had an increase in food service supplies when we were doing a lot of the to-go meals, extra cleaning that they had, and it was necessary to do. And so we also kind of budgeted for that. And that's a perfect example of one that we may not need all that money if we're not doing, you know, to-go meals and pick-up meals and all those kinds of, it just may not be necessary in the future. And we'll have to reevaluate that when it's time to kind of do this budget. So actual costs so far, as you can see, it's not a lot compared to what's budgeted. Special services has spent a little bit in supplies. The instructional resources we've spent on some replacement items. Obviously, our electronic subscriptions, those are annual costs there that we're building, and our class fees are the biggest ones. Part of the class fees, you look at like 612, like why is it only $18,000 for them, and it's $64,000 or $5,000 for K5. It's not that that's all we're spending. Some of this also does have an overlap with ESSER2. Some of these buildings also had balances in their actual fee accounts that we needed to spend out before we moved to this grant money. So this is not the total picture of everything that was spent on class fees for students. It's just kind of what was picked up by the grant this year. So I just don't want anyone to think that we only spent like $18,000 on grades 6 through 12. And then actual here, obviously nothing for Go Guardian. And custodial supplies, we still had a balance in ESSER2 as well. So we're just kind of transitioning over now to using ESSER3 for our custodial supplies. And so you see a little bit there. And then finally, our capital outlay, we did purchase instruments that we would have. Ms. Jones had come to me and asked if this was an allowable expense, and her reasoning behind it, I thought was good, so I agreed with it. Was that there are many students, especially now during COVID, who may not have the means to purchase their own instrument, but could really benefit from being involved in these programs. And maybe if we had some more that we could loan out we could get some more involvement, especially kids, you know, that are coming back from being remote and really need to, you know, and want to be involved in stuff, but maybe just are unable to. So that was good enough for me. So we went ahead and did that. And then obviously we've talked before a lot about the bipolar air ionization, which also included some kind of upgrades to our HVAC systems, the boilers, in order to make sure all the proper controls were in place there. So bulk of that was paid for out of ESSER 2, but there is some overlap here for ESSER 3. And actually, you can see we've done almost a little more than half on the instruments, and then we've done a little bit. We've started to shift over into ESSER 3 for the facilities stuff. So to wrap that up, then, to kind of show where we're at, the next one is kind of our grand totals. So there's the grand total budget of everything. And coming down to that, on a page, yeah. So you see the $5 million down at the bottom. Again, this will look different next year, just the way they do it. It's kind of the grants are hard because they're a 3-year period when typically they're only a year, and it's kind of like, okay, once you're done, you're done. And so it's like, I have this amount, and I've been requesting stuff for a couple years. It just makes it a little bit more confusing to kind of follow, I guess you would say, because just the way they have it. But we're making do with it. I'm making do with it, I guess. Sounds like it, doesn't it? And then if you go to the actuals, you can see we're really not. We really haven't dove into ESSER 3 yet. We had a little over $2 million in ESSER 2 and a little over $500,000 in ESSER 1 that we've been lucky enough to still be using for a lot of these same items that you see on here. And they go through the same process with ODE and everything to be approved, so it's not like we're out there just willy-nilly doing whatever we want. They all go through the same process. They're very particular. It's reviewed a lot. They ask for a lot of documentation. So this one just, like I said, has the added requirement of kind of the public input and kind of reporting out on it. So we've only spent under $500,000 of the $5 million, and we still have a balance of almost $4.4 million, which next year we'll really be into this, and there'll be more expenses, but that we have until 2024, and then that period, we have to spend it then, or we would lose it. So, and ESSER 2 and ESSER 1 are on different timetables. So, ESSER 2 is 2023. ESSER 1 is this year. We're done with that, so I'm not worried about that. ESSER 2 will be fine. But so they're all on kind of different timetables with that. But you can go to the next one. Found another one of her not swearing. That's it. Do you have any questions or?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
So the 9/30/24 date, does it all have to be like define spent? Like, can we have encumbered funds? What is there? What's the rule on that?
Yeah, the way the federal grants work is, so that's considered September 30th, 2024 is period of availability. So what happens, and it's just like all of our other federal grants, by June 30th, everything has to be encumbered that you intend to spend. It literally has to be spent, check sent, by September 30th, because by September 30th, what they require us to do at ODE is a final expenditure report for all of our grants. So basically, I go in and I say, we spent this in this category, this, and I submit it and tell them, that's it, give us our final, whatever's due to us at that time, if we haven't already received it. These won't carry over our other federal funds if we still have, 5,000. It'll just carry over into the next year. Once they've approved it, they'll add it to our allocation for the following year. So yes, encumbered, put in a purchase order on the books before we close the fiscal year, and then spent by that 30th
So we
date
got
of
about
September.
2 years, so we're probably gonna end up looking at other things to appropriate towards this if I'm looking at this accurate. Like the actuals are coming in a little bit under because of SR2. So like what we have budgeted now, we would have to have additional things.
Yeah,
locked
so
on
like all the
here.
stuff we had budgeted for this year, which I think, if I look at the total budget, let me find that page. For this year was almost 2 million. Yeah, we're probably not going to do that. So yeah, so then next year, when we have to like basically go through the process again, we will have to come up with, some things to do with that money over the course of the next 2 years.
I think, so like as we do emergency levy planning, it's possible that things that we would have put there, we might end up bumping onto
Yes.
this because this has a spend down date, whereas that
Correct.
money would be over a 5-year period.
Correct,
So
yeah.
Lots of moving parts with that.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question. I think it's gonna end up being for Dr. Cruz. But on the YMCA program, could you get us a report and maybe like the next month on what was in that contract and what has actually been delivered? Because I know that there's been some challenges with staffing and other things. I just want to make sure that what was contracted for, we're getting. So
Yeah.
you don't have to, but if you could get something.
Christy and I have worked together collaboratively on this to
I can tell you that what we initially contracted with, we've had discussions with them, like that's not what we're paying on a monthly basis because of any number of circumstances, them having a hard time finding people, the numbers of the program, just different things like that, that what we anticipated or wanted, just, it's nobody's fault, it just hasn't been able to happen for any number of reasons, and so, we're not paying that full cost for something less. We've kind of had that discussion with them and worked out, like, here's where we're gonna be, so.
But I'd just be interested in seeing that if you
Yeah,
work through
yeah.
your departments and give us something in the
Mm-hmm.
near future. And then, can you clarify on class fees? Because I think when we say class fees, it's almost misleading, because it's not like we charge these people money and so we're not charging them. Those are like purchase services, really, like.
Yeah, so our class fees would be in a typical year, you would get your little thing home saying you owe XYZ. Those are typically things that are consumable in nature, or some sort of subscription that is an individual student. For a class like art or something, it may be you need to purchase a canvas, we're gonna do this. You walk away with that at the end of the day, that's yours. A lot of workbooks, we've done, different things, any number of different supplies. It's really something that, looking back at the old way and not ESSER, and kind of where those funds were in our 009 fund, those are things that are deemed to be consumable in nature and or the student gets to keep, that they're paying for at the end of the day. And then the tech fee is also, but we did not leave that, but that is also one. And that encompasses, I wish Ryan was here, because that's always a question we get here and there is kind of, I have my own Chromebook, and it's so much more than just that. It's those subscriptions, it's all these different things that have been made available to the students for technology.
Would it be possible in the future if we have more money here than we think we had when we originally budgeted because of SR2, that maybe we could potentially waive that for a year?
That's
Something
possible.
we can talk about.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah. That is
committing us to it, but.
Yeah, that's definitely possible for sure. That was one of the things we didn't this year, and we did not do career tech just because that was a 6-district program. And I didn't want to get in the middle of that, and I also didn't find it to be completely fair that a student from Woodridge may come here and not have to pay fees, but one of our students may have to go to Talmadge and they, and they do have to pay fees, and meanwhile the rest of their peers are not, you know, like here. And it's kind of its own separate thing, so we left that alone.
Anyone else? Well, thank you. When will be the next time that we would hit back on this topic again?
What's the it would probably be August.
Okay.
I was looking at July, but I think August might be better. Just being back in school and having kind of getting through that process of budgeting, that would be, the July meeting would be pretty quick. I think that'd be a good time because we'll have all that approved for the next school year and kind of what our plan is for that. And so that would be the best time to do it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'd point out, Joe, though, that Ellen was a lot quicker than you were. I'm just saying.
For what?
For your presentation.
Oh, I know, thank you. Couldn't just leave
We
you
have a
with
time limit. We were told 10 minutes or less.
Next up is presentation number 5, the Heat Company. Welcome to come on up. We need you to present from up here because it records.
I'm gonna set the stage. So the book that was sent out, this book here, was sent out in the Friday packet, explains everything that we have the proposal for. It's in the proposal. This is for 2 buildings, Lincoln Elementary and Richardson. And we chose those for many reasons, or several reasons, but this is a total HVAC renovation. Just isn't air conditioning. This would help us as far as our uncontrollable spikes in heat. We would put new controls in. We would have new univents. Univents are original. Controls are probably original as well in the buildings. Univents are actually what we get our heat and we'll get, if we move forward, the air conditioning from. This will help eliminate at Richardson 2 boilers that are actually old, and they're steam boilers. And we have hot water boilers throughout most of the districts, throughout this district, besides Silver Lake is also steam. Well, those steam boilers at Richardson are causing us a lot of problems. We have underground piping. We replaced about 90 to 95 feet of piping in that underground area of Richardson from the steam boilers, and it cost us about $20,000. So it's extremely expensive to maintain the heating system that we now have at Richardson. If we were to choose to go with this proposal, it would eliminate those old steam boilers. There's 2 of them. It would eliminate the piping underground, and it would replace things like the univents, and which would help us to bring in more fresh air the way we should. Lincoln, we would keep those boilers in. Those boilers, some of them are 12, maybe 15 years old. I'm not quite sure. Maybe we may even have one that's 10. But those aren't steam boilers. Those are hot water boilers, and we don't have nearly the problems with those as we do with the ones at Richardson. But this is a total package for HVAC: heating, ventilation, air conditioning, everything. So first, we'll have Keith up from Equalis Group, and he's going to talk about the public sector procurement. And then we'll ask Corey to speak from Johnson Locke. And then we will have the 2 gentlemen from Heat who help to develop the scope of work, what we need, and what they're going to do. And that will be Ron, and that will be Jim from Heat. But first, I'll have Keith up to talk about from the Equalis Group.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, everybody. Keith McDonough with Equalis Group. Is this group familiar with purchasing cooperatives at all? Or would it be good for me to give kind of a high-level overview?
Go for it.
Why don't we do that? So what Equalis Group does is we go out and publicly procure goods and services. We go through a formal procurement process and make contract awards utilizing lead partner relationships that we have. And then the district can then in turn piggyback on this contract because it's already gone through that vetting process. All the procurement regulations are covered, and then you could use this contract as a legal exemption to a formal public procurement process. Now, with this particular contract, we actually worked it very locally. We do a lot of different national contracts. We probably have 145 to 150 publicly procured contracts in our portfolio. But with this particular contract, we thought it was critical to have local supplier partners, local vendors that our different metropolitan areas in the state of Ohio could leverage so they could work with local people. So we did a formal bid here in the state of Ohio by region, so by metro area. So this would be the Cleveland, Akron area, obviously. And then we did one in Youngstown, we did one out in Toledo, we did in Columbus, Cincinnati, and Dayton, et cetera. And then we made specific awards to the local contractors after they went through that bid process. And Johnson Locks was one of the awardees. So I'm going to let Corey talk about the actual contract and how it works and how the district can leverage it. We're local. Some of you might remember us as Sourcing Office. We did business in the 2000s as Sourcing Office, then Sourcing Alliance. Excuse me. We were acquired 2 years ago by Qualys Group, and I stay on to lead this part of the country. And we have an office up in, we're local, we're on Cocker Road in Seoul. Any questions?
Not yet.
Yeah, and look, real quick, and I think this is a level-setting exercise. When you folks go out and spend taxpayer dollars, you have three options. You can go through a formal bid or RFP process. You're all familiar with that. There's some advantages and disadvantages, candidly, right? It certainly expends a lot of resources. Sometimes you don't always get what you want, and there's other issues there. You could leverage what they call state term contract. Great for commodity items, not so much for solution type proposals, or you can piggyback on a publicly procured contract like this one. So those are your three options, and this satisfies the one where you could piggyback on a contract that's gone through that procurement process. Corey.
Thanks, Keith. First of all, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. Thanks for allowing us to come speak to you. My name is Corey Van Laningham, Director of Operations for Johnson Locks Construction, Ohio. We are a general contractor and construction management firm with offices in Cleveland and Columbus. As Keith mentioned, we were awarded a contract with them for the Cleveland area as well as the Columbus area. We specialize in the commercial industries of government and education on the federal, state, and local levels. In order to become an approved contractor with Equalis, we went through an extensive bid process, which was competitively bid by multiple contractors. Following that bid process, we were fortunate enough to win one of those contracts with Equalis, which now allows us to perform this work for local government entities like yourselves. One of the most important benefits of utilizing a program like this is it allows the school district to streamline the process of setting up a project and actually carrying out the work. It allows the school district to save a significant amount of time and money on the front end of these types of projects. Since the procurement requirements have already been met through the bid process with Equalis, we can jump right into the design, procuring materials, and construction. We are able to work directly with the school district to determine a scope of work and follow up with a formal proposal. This proposal will include a detailed list of the labor, materials, and equipment that will be required to complete the project. Another extremely important benefit of this program is the detailed list that comes along with this proposal. It provides a transparency to the pricing structure. As mentioned, this detailed list on the proposal, it essentially gives you a line item by line item pricing for every nut and bolt that goes into a project. It then creates an auditable proposal for you guys to review, and that allows us to work directly with Joe and his staff to develop the final scope of work while preserving your budget. If that proposal is approved, Johnson Locks will manage the project from start to finish, including design and permitting, material procurement, hiring and managing the subcontractors, on-site supervision, and closing out the project. Now that I've had a little chance to tell you about the process, I want to open it up for any questions on the general contractor side of this before handing it over to Ron.
I have two questions for you. Are there
Yes, sir.
any specific school districts that you've worked with? You have a good set of like references and places, but I wasn't
Yes.
sure there were any school districts that you had done this particular work that we could look to.
Yes, we have worked with a few different school districts, one being Northwestern School District in Springfield. And if you'd like some references and a longer list, I can certainly provide that.
Was that for this type of work though? That's my question. Like this was like Univent and HVAC work.
That particular project was more lighting and other. We did some work on their baseball fields,
Yeah.
a lighting retrofit, things like that. And we've done some extensive HVAC renovations for other entities, for the Department of Corrections, and the department, the Attorney General's office as well. So yes, we've done extensive work with HVAC renovations.
If you want to get it to Mr. Brigetti, I'd be interested in specifically if you've done it with schools. And
Sure.
then the other question I have is, and this is just off the top of your head, what's the oldest building you've done HVAC work on?
The oldest building,
That you obviously that you recall in this moment.
probably from the 50s.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's all. Others before the next. All good.
I have a question.
Sure.
Given the age of these buildings, is asbestos going to be an issue with doing these types of jobs? And is it going to be disruptive to, like, class time? Will be done during the school year, or during the summertime?
So we'll work directly with Joe to determine the schedule, but we will most certainly take into consideration to not disrupt any operations. So I'm not sure when, if it would be summer work, night work. We have the ability to work around the schedule of the school. As far as the asbestos, I'll let Joe speak to that.
Well, right now, the scope, the work would not be done, would not disrupt school at all. We've already had that conversation. One of the reasons why we talked to Heat was their pricing did not reflect an increase of cost. It was not an increase in cost to work second or third shift when there's no students or anybody like that in the building. Our buildings and Ron and Jim will speak to it. It's really unique, our buildings, because some things that we wouldn't normally redo the HVAC system like we're doing now in a new building. It just wouldn't be this way. But because there's things like from ceiling to roof, lack of height where you can't run ductwork, so to speak. So we have to do the individual, and then we would run if we could, we'd run ductwork and have diffusers and things like that. Now we just have to stay with the old system and replace all the univents. And then that just requires some drilling through the roof. In projects we haven't had any indication that there's any asbestos or anything like that. We're not tearing any roofs off. As you know, at that school specifically, we did do a roof project. And there's been no asbestos in the roof. So here, essentially, I believe, Ron, they're just going to be drilling into the roof to run lines and stuff like that through. So there's not going to be a total tear-off. School will not be interrupted. It'll be done in the summer if we can get everything approved and the parts in, and when beyond that, it would be done second or third shift.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah, maybe I could answer some of your questions. I'm Ron Thomas. I'm the president of Total Facility Solutions. Jim Benedict is here with me. We've worked together on the project. I think some of your early questions about references, Joe, did you not? You've called people, you've checked with people we've worked with. We do projects all over the state of Ohio as far as renovation, controls, lighting. Heat stands for heating, electrical, and air conditioning, temperature control. So we've done quite a few of these type of projects. Joe's done a great job kind of telling you what we were looking at doing. Initially, we were told to look at air conditioning the buildings. And some of the suggestions that came out were, you know, put a wall-mounted unit and then run the lines up and put a separate, you know, the cooling unit on the roof or outside the building. And we looked at that and we said, there's really no way to control that. And during the air conditioning season, you wouldn't have fresh air. The fresh air currently comes through those unit vents. You remember when you're in school, the box that sits below the window and it blows air up. Well, that has a grill to the outside. So if you tried to run those unit vents with that outside air with no air conditioning to bring in fresh air and you had the cooling unit over there on the wall, it wouldn't work very well. So we looked at the condition of the unit vents. The controls are pneumatic, the old ones, the air bleeds off and on, really kind of in poor condition. And we thought the best thing to do would be to do what they call a VRF system. So we would set bigger units on the roof that would cool typically 4 to 6 rooms, and we would have new unit vents. And at Lincoln, we would tie into the existing hot water boilers. They're newer boilers, they're in good shape. So that would be your heat. And we put a gym unit, a separate gym unit on, and then all those unit vents would be new. You'd have new unit vents, new controls. One of the big things that we do is we do temperature, humidity, and CO2 monitoring in the rooms. And everybody heard of this thing called COVID, right? And they know about fresh air. Well, the CO2 monitors the amount of fresh air in every room. And if there's not people in there, the dampers can shut down to save you energy. If there are a bunch of people in there, the dampers will open back up and allow that room to ventilate properly. So now by going with new units with air conditioning, we have basically an entire new system in those school buildings. Over at Richardson, you mentioned the steam system. Steam's not really a great way to heat a building. It's kind of hard to control. The pipes are going bad. The boilers are ancient. So we're going to do a system over there that also provides heat. So the VRF system would provide cooling and it would provide heat, and it would eliminate that old system. Most of it would be abandoned in place because it's in the crawl space or under the building. So again, CO2, temperature, humidity, all in one in that control system in that building. That's kind of how it works. You probably saw some maps. The colors, you can kind of see, okay, we've got this group of room on one unit, we've got the units on the roof. It shows what the unit ventilators work or what they look like and how they work. And we just felt like that would be the best solution for you. In fact, it's probably the only solution because you can't run ductwork through those old buildings. There's just, it's impossible to do any other system really than what we've proposed in there. So we thought that's probably the best overall solution. And I know you guys have they've asked a lot of questions and really vetted this thing out well.
I think one thing that's important to know that, let me give you an example. I think we have between the two buildings, and Ron, tell me if I'm wrong, about 65 or 70 unit vents that have to be replaced?
Correct.
Okay, so in each one of those, or in most of those, the unit vents have a coil, they have an actuator, they have a motor. We just replaced 3 coils at Silver Lake, 3 different unit vents over the summer, $12,000. $4,000 a vent, $800 for a motor. I mean, there's some really expensive parts that are going in these unit vents. And again, you know, you say we can repair some of these things, but it's not fitting what we should have for our students. I mean, we don't have air conditioning, so what's the best way to put air conditioning? But also make sure that we address the heating issues. As everybody knows, controlling of temperature with controls is difficult in this district because they're so antiquated, they're old, they haven't been used. We just spent a great deal of money at the high school to help get 10 air handlers running because how we used to do it, if it was too cold, if it was too warm or too hot in the gymnasium at the high school, the custodian went up and threw a switch and shut off the outside air coming in or the air conditioning. I mean, that's we have pistons and rods that are disconnected to air handlers throughout the district because we haven't had in the past the money to fix those things. This would take care of 2 buildings and assure that we have quality we would be able to see on our phones. We'd be able to know if something shut down or if it was running out of temperature by just looking at a phone. One of the maintenance guys would be able to do that on an app.
Do you have any questions?
I have two. One is, this would require the city, because we have public power here, the city to do some work. And then they are on a January through December budget, so that's locked in. So then we would have to wait till next year, because we have to have that piece. That piece have to be done before we could do what we need to do.
Well, we've talked and worked with the power company on this. We could start at Lincoln because we're gonna take those old hot water unit vents out and put a new hot water unit vent in. And we could control just like you are now, except obviously better. And then we could run the refrigerant lines and the equipment to it. But we will need to upgrade the power. In fact, they already have a power upgrade plan for your existing service. We're actually putting in a separate service for the air conditioning units themselves. So we've been working with them and talking to them about that. I think they're holding back some transformers. He told you, Jim, they have transformers held back, set aside for the school. But yeah, we're working with them on that expense as far as boring and getting the power to the building.
And
And
then,
they said they would be working directly with you guys as they get that information together too, with Joe.
how disruptive is this work to like a classroom? Like, is it gonna affect walls, or it's just gonna, or is it just the univent comes out, the new one comes in?
Pretty much, taking it out, putting it in. We also have figured covers so that we're not running refrigerant lines exposed. So we would have all that covered in each room, covered up. The thing we'd probably do is bore all the holes in the summer where you have to go through the walls to run to the units. Bore the holes as soon as school's out and have a chance to clean all that up, even if you don't run the lines. But yeah, as Joe mentioned, we work 4-10s. They'll come in second shift, third shift, and swap the units out, and they might do, 4 or 5 of the classroom unit events a night and clean up, and you won't even know they're there.
Others?
Do we have a analysis, like a cost analysis of how much would be anticipating to cost us after they're in, as opposed to what we're currently doing now? I mean, obviously, we're gonna be running air, which we're not currently doing, so that affects our electricity. Is that a large jump for our district and a monthly cost to upkeep these, or will it be reduced because of everything we're replacing that is so old?
I don't have a cost analysis, but what I do know is it could very well not save us as far as an electrical cost, because we are now going to have fresh air brought in. We are now going to have the air turnover that we're going to. In order to do that, we need to have this univent running. We need to have that. There's been nobody's put any pen to a piece of paper to try to figure that, if there's any savings or anything like that. Right now, when we did the bipolar aeronization, that we expected to have an electrical increase because of the univents that were going to have to be running on a continuous basis for that air ionization to work. So there's many spots in the district or several spots in the district that we're not getting the proper airflow right now. And that's what these will help take care of. Right now, as far as I've been told, and as far as all the questions I've asked, this is really the only and most efficient way to go with putting air conditioning and heating renovation in our buildings right now.
To answer your question, because I've had that question asked a lot in the past, it really comes down to the board policy. And that policy is going to be, are we going to run these buildings during the summer? Are you going to let your custodians run the entire building because they're cleaning? That type of thing. Or are you going to say, look, we're going to shut it off when school's out, and, or we'll maintain it at 80 degrees, and we're going to start it up a week before school starts. I know teachers like to come back a month before school starts. Will those teachers expect to have the air conditioning on or not? That's really a board policy. if you say, look, no, we're not, don't expect your building to be 72 degrees all summer long for 1 or 2 custodians, or if a teacher stops by, or, you know, and then you always hear that story about, well, we can't wax the floors without air conditioning. Well, you've been waxing the floors there for 100 years without air conditioning. So I know you can do it. But it really comes, the energy consumption really comes down to what are you prepared to set down and tell them, this is how we're going to operate it. You know, at Christmas break, do you expect for, you know, that week or two, do they expect to come in and have it 72 degrees, or can you shut it down to 60, you know, or 64 degrees? That's really the big difference.
That's a big difference that we don't have the ability to do now. We can say in a classroom, we're looking at between, I don't know, 69 and 72 or 70 to 74, whatever we decide that setting should be, which is a savings in itself because we don't have that ability right now. And we can lock it in, we can change it, we can do whatever we want with that. That's where the controls piece comes in. That's where that comes in, where it's going to be really nice to be able to have that ability to set temperatures in every room and not have them move around unless we choose to do that.
So,
That's why I asked for controls as well.
yeah. That was my question, because I get my little Allen wrench and get into the boiler and turn, well, the thing, and turn it on. And then it would get so hot, you'd have to get the Allen wrench back out, go, flick, and turn it off. And I was constantly doing that all day long. We won't have that now.
No, not at those two buildings. No. You'll actually be able to, the teacher in the room would be able to control it from inside the room with these new controls. Or we can lock them, we can set them at a particular setting and leave them there. It's a whole new world.
Yeah.
From what we know now.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question too.
Sure.
Would the cooling, would the kitchens also be getting air conditioning?
Yes.
Okay. The actual kitchens,
Yes.
not to the, okay, perfect.
Yeah, that was extra, you know, larger areas. The only thing that wouldn't be, and tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of looking at this and talking with you, would be hallways.
Correct.
We would not have diffusers or anything in the hallway, but, you know, with vents and doors, and doors being open and closed, you know, that would all filter into that. I don't know that you would even notice the difference walking into a hallway versus a classroom. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's correct. There'll be heating there. There wasn't an effort to put in air conditioning. But the fact that you're bringing in outdoor air during the cooling season too, that outdoor air coming in through the classroom pushes its way into the hallway just by pure air pressure.
I have two more questions. The bipolar air, ionization is gonna be compatible with this, correct?
Great question. It's a great question. You take that right from what we have now and put it on the new univents.
Correct.
And then I was reading about the filter, MERV 8 filter. Is that kind of what standard? Because I was reading that some schools use an 8, some school like 11, some 13.
You can use whatever level you want.
Okay, so they would be compatible.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Part of the ionization, what you do is it takes all those particles and dirt and kind of clings them together, and then they pick up in the filter more. So sometimes if you spend more money on filters and you just clog them up faster, you may not need to, so you just kind of have to see how it works.
Well, went down a rabbit hole, I was reading about those filters, and they're like, oh, they use an 8, but we wanted to use a 13, but they don't make a half-inch 13 there, and you guys said you were using the 1-inch, so I was like, they do make 1-inch 13s.
You did
And
your
all of a
homework.
sudden, an hour is gone, I was reading about filters. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I just have one more. What is the typical lifespan of these units that you would be anticipating putting in?
15, 20 years, but it's like anything. It's back to like the car analogy. If you take care of your car, it'll go 200,000 miles. If you abuse it, you know, it won't. So hopefully you'll, you know, maintain them. The unit vents shouldn't be a problem. The outdoor units, the biggest thing with those is they need cleaned. You get the ragweed and pollen and things that clog them up. they'll need clean, but that's about it.
Thank you.
I just have one more. We were wondering what HEAT stands for. What's the acronym?
Heating, electrical, air conditioning, temperature control.
Thank you. We had a conversation about that one. So ultimately, to close this out, this is not a voting agenda item tonight, because the reality is these are large expenditures if we choose to make them, and we need to talk strategically about where those come from, and also acknowledge the fact that we know DeWitt is air conditioned mostly, not fully. If we were going down the road, we'd have to talk about getting that fully air conditioned, and then what that costs and what the cost for the other 3 buildings would be as well, because I don't think anyone's conversation is, if we're gonna do this, we have to do it across the board. So there are more things for us to talk about on a district stance, so this will probably pop up again.
These are the 2 major buildings right now that I would say would, and I think Ron and Jim have looked at all of them or been to at least had seen blueprints. They're much smaller. So that scope of work should be much smaller and shouldn't reach the numbers that they are in these 2 buildings. These are, I believe they're, off the top of my head, I know Lincoln is, but I believe Richardson may be our 2nd largest elementary building. Yeah,
DeWitt. And then is Silver Lake too old though, or can you do buildings that are 100 years old?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lincoln's not young.
No, it
It's
isn't,
not a
I
young
know,
building.
but Silver Lake is.
They named it after Lincoln because
Is the
people
next-
were alive with memories
Oh,
of Lincoln.
okay.
No, I'm not making that up. That's the reality of the building, so.
No, but I think Silver Lake is, other than the high school,
Yeah.
the oldest in our district, so I was just curious whether, even if it's possible there.
Yeah, Silver Lake this way is one that we would probably eliminate those old steam boilers as well. Because there's only 2 buildings that we have steam boilers, and Richardson and Silver Lake are those 2 buildings.
Thank you, Jim.
So we'll have further conversations about what this would look like from a fiscal standpoint to our district, and is that a viable option for us? And I'm sure Ms. Stoicoy will have plenty of thoughts to share on this as well. So thank you all for coming
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping us understand what this is. On to item E, Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda. Ms. Christy Stoicoy.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the treasurer's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, sorry, that's me. Just the one set of minutes, the major, amendment to the appropriations is in food service, and it's a large amount, and it's twofold. One, it's just rising costs, compared to prior years, and 2, the amount of food that we are actually serving, is obviously increased over the year, so our costs for supplies, have increased as well. I know Joe had mentioned that, Bill's going to go back, we're gonna cut back on some of the things perhaps that we aren't using as much and things like that, and see what we can do, but, there's still those increased costs for those supplies, those food supplies. And then just donations, obviously we have the birdie bags, and then a few other ones to Richardson.
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Item F, Treasurer CFO's business. Ms. Christy Stoicoy.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the January 2022 investment schedule and monthly spending report.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, I'll just lead it off. We asked Ms. Stoicoy to kind of give a deep dive on all these financial reports for all of us, but especially for our new board members. It's the this chunk of this is these financial reports. Make sure we all understand what we're looking at and have a base knowledge as we work together on this. And I know, to warn Ms. Stoicoy, I think 4 of us are attending a School Finance 101 webinar next Friday, so you'll probably get hit up with a lot of questions after
Right.
that. So take it away.
All right, we'll start with the very first one. So the all checks. It's pretty self-explanatory. But these are all of our accounts payable checks that we do each month. So it's just this month, which was January, because that's what we're approving. You'll see obviously check number, who they're to, whether they've been reconciled or outstanding, that just have they cleared the bank or not, and the amount and then the date that of the check. So you see any number of different checks. Just so you know, these come from, if you look at the appropriations, any number of those funds. Some of these things, I know over the course of my career, people have asked, you know, let's say you see one, it's like the Cavs or something. It's like, oh, you're buying Cavs, you know, tickets or this or that. And a lot of times those are student fundraiser things or things that are paid for by clubs or, you know, so if you do have a question on one, obviously we can come up with exactly what it is. But that's the list of that. Let's go. I'm gonna cut to. So we can go out of that one. And you can see, I mean, we do a lot of checks. The reduction of expenditure ledger, I'm going to go through all the ones that are from the system. There. So these are, so a reduction of expenditure. Some of our receipts come in and they're revenue, and it's revenue that, you know, we invoice for, or it's just straight revenue. Some of the things we do, require us to be reimbursed, let's say, and so it's not necessarily considered a revenue, it's called a reduction of expense. So it's kind of, we put the expense out first, we pay for it, but we're really not the ultimate payers, we're going to get that money back from somewhere. So basically it kind of just does that in out on the budget line. And so these are all of those things. So for instance, one you'll see a lot on here is our BCI checks. So we run those, we pay that bill, but people pay us for their things, and we deposit that money and then just reduce the expenditure account, basically give it a credit for that there. You'll see a lot of different things as far as when the state gives me our payments. So there are positives and there are negatives on that. So there are still, even though we've really pared down the number of negatives because of the way they're funding now, and there's not all that in and out because there used to be. There still are some things that get charged out within special education, within 6th district, with the compact for career tech. So you'll see some positives, and then as you see on here, those like anytime it says 1st January or 2nd January, those are all those monthly state payments that I receipt the revenues as a whole, but then this to get kind of the net amount, and that's how we need to do it. So that's another big part of this is a lot of the things we do, taxes. When they come in, there are fees associated with that, but I post the gross revenue as a receipt and then those fees as an expense, and then we get the net. But you'll see the fees on here because of the way it's posted, because these are typically things that don't run through a purchase order, because it's just kind of like we get the net payment and we've got to kind of put it in the system. And you may see like in these, anytime you see a correction, that's probably we've just coded something wrong, or maybe, oops, we didn't mean to charge that account, we meant to charge this other one, or a different special cost center. That's a lot of them, where I say, okay, we need to, like, we shouldn't have taken it out of this year's account, we should have taken it out of, you know, ESSER 2, not ESSER 3, or something like that. And so we're just kind of truing all that up there. So that's kind of just a total of things that happen to the budget line items and those expenditures outside of the check process, basically. We can click out of that. The spending plan summary. So this was formerly called, for those of you who may have paid attention when you weren't on the board, to those reports, and for those that were here, this is formerly called like the SM12 or SM plan. It's now called the spending plan. This is just general fund. This is just looking at general fund, and it's set up just like the 5-year forecast. So it's just kind of a monthly snapshot of those actual things. Like, we actually got $2.9 million in unrestricted grants and aid, and that's one of the components of the 5-year forecast for this month. I would like to say I'm like really good, and my estimates are always so spot on that there's never any difference, but I go in after the fact and make it so that they are, because I have no way of knowing all of this stuff. But I don't like there'd be negatives in that monthly difference, and that would annoy me. So I go in and make them match so it looks better and is nicer. But it's just kind of, that's basically a calculation by the system that says, hey, we have all these accounts that are tied to these different parts of your forecast. Here's what actually happened. And then I will use these reports to kind of, when I'm doing my forecast, to look at, okay, where are we actually at? And then you see a running, anything that says FY or FYTD, that's fiscal year. So those on the very right are fiscal year to date. So that's since July 1st through, this would be the end of January. That's what we've taken in these different ones. We can click out of there. Appropriation resolution. This is basically the same thing as my appropriation. So every month we run this report and make sure that they match what the approved appropriations were for the month prior, and use it for that. So it's the same thing you see when you approve those.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So these numbers are
So those are all the
the
funds.
account numbers?
Those are all the different funds that we have. Within all those funds then, there are a number of different, I think in total we probably have 7,000 different budget line items or something close to it. They're not all in use, but a good majority of them are. So they all get broken down to building levels and function levels and different special cost centers and different things like that. So those are the overarching high level look at the funds. So each of those then breaks further down, some more than others. So, yep. We can let's look at the red tree. We'll look at accrued interest. And these are all going to look the same. I'll kind of just talk you through what each one of them, the differences in them mean. So these are all, there are 4 different accounts we have at Red Tree, and it's kind of to keep a lot of our building project money separate so that the interest is collected separate, and I don't have to figure that out myself every month and keep, because we have to keep track of it. So these additional proceeds were the additional proceeds we received when we sold the bonds that we also used to help make that larger principal payment. So this was, the bond was $80,610,000, I believe, and then there was like $5 million in additional proceeds on top of that from what happened when we sold the bonds. So we received like $86 million, but these were just considered additional, and we said we were going to use them right away to pay off that that bond. So this was originally higher, and then we've taken some money out because we made that first big payment. So you'll see the beginning values, and then you'll usually see our interest and any of the management fees that are due to Red Tree from the prior month. So that's what the additional proceeds is. That one won't be around for very long, because once we're able to kind of deplete it to pay these, pay back what we need, it won't exist anymore. If we go out of that and we go to the Red Tree General, this is where our original starting account that we had with Red Tree when we decided to kind of diversify and invest funds. So these are kind of the cash we have that is not appropriated, like with the bonds or the building project. So this is cash in there that we have. I think we started with $5 million, and then within the last year or so we added another $3 million because we were able to, and kind of put it there for them to invest for us. And that one will remain. And if you go down, it breaks down exactly what all we're invested in and kind of the maturity dates on those, and who they're with, and different things, and it's kind of broken down by, whether it's agency notes or certificates of deposit, and it, like if it's certificates of deposit, you'll see Ally Bank or Sallie Mae Bank, or, and you'll see the interest rate that's there, and then when they mature on those. So you get that breakdown there. If we click out of there, the other two are construction parts of the bond. So there's our LFI portion, which we can go, same exact concept. This is just our locally funded portion because that's all required to be kept separate as well. This is the portion that is not OFCC dictated or they're involved with. This is our money that we could do what we wish with. And then if you go to the local share one for Red Tree, it's the same thing, but this is the portion that is our portion, the 63% that is in conjunction with the OFCC share. And each of them all have where they're invested and all of that.
This is like our co-fund.
This is our co-funded portion, yes. Yep. And then we'll go back to the beginning, the all funds monthly cash flow. So this is inclusive of everything you see on that appropriation resolution, all of those funds, except for our 004 and our 010, which are the two building project, which the LFI and the co-funded portion. So it's everything except for that is inclusive in this. So I'll just real quickly, January, we had revenues of about 4.2 million, expenditures overall of 4.8. That is very typical for the month of January. We actually did better this January than most because when they changed over to the new funding formula, they kind of caught everybody up to where they needed to be. So we got an initial large payment of about $2 million to get us where we need to be. That is not going to keep happening. That doesn't. It's normally evenly split, but they wanted to get everybody back to where they needed to be and then go forward with the regular payments. So typically, you can see in the past. We don't bring in a lot of revenue in the November, December, January months because we are not receiving the real estate taxes, which is a large source of our revenue. And we're typically, our biggest payments in those months are the state foundation. So we ended with a little over 23 million, minus those building project funds. Athletics is the next one in the monthly cash flow. And please stop me if you have a question on any of these. I don't want to rush through anything there. Revenues for athletics this month, January, about 13,000. Spent a little more than that. They are still in a very good position, better than they've been in the last few years. They're sitting around 130,000. So. Them and food service, we all had concerns about last year during COVID and just the lack of revenue to both those departments. These are both funds that are kept separate and independent from everything else, so it's not like we can just say, oh, well, I'll take it from this part of the budget and move it. These are all kept kind of by themselves. So, but they're both doing well. We can look at the food service one next. Food service, it was around 153,000 that they brought in. It's down compared to the last couple of months, but that's because we're in arrears and how we get that. That was the month of December, and so with Christmas break, there's not as many school days, so not as many meals served, but it's still well better than where we were last year at this time, and even in fiscal 20 before COVID had hit. We spent around 135. And so their balance is 328,000 right now. You can see last year they were negative 101, and that was with a $200,000 advance. So that's a swing of almost $500,000 in the last year, which is great. General fund monthly cash flow. So this is just our general fund. This is everything that is in the forecast. That is, because the forecast is general fund only. General fund is the 001 account. We brought in 3.7 million. Again, the state revenue comes into this, into the general fund. So that's the reason for the large increase over December and the past few years in January. We spent a little over 4 million. And so we ended January a little over 16 million, which is still almost 6 million better than last year and about 12 million better than 2 years ago. So that's good. And then the LFI monthly cash flow, again, LFI, there's not a whole lot going on here yet as far as expenses. You'll see revenues is basically interest. Expenditures are basically those monthly fees on that interest. We have started to do some things with the, we haven't really started to use the LFI money exactly. What you see here in January is an expenditure, and the reason there's a negative, that was one of those corrections to the accounts of this should have been out of the co-funded portion and not our LFI portion type thing. So that's why you see that there. And you can see where we ended. We just really haven't spent any money. There's not activity out of this yet. And then the last cash flow is the local share. This has a little bit more activity since we started the abatement at Newberry and started some things there. Again, revenues are just going to be the interest for the most part. And previously the expenditures were the just the management fees from Red Tree, but now we've also started, we do have some purchase orders on and some different things happening that we have paid for. And so, but we're still, obviously, it's nowhere near the amount of money that is in there, so we're still sitting there. And then the last two things are the January interest. So this in itself is just kind of taking all of those different Red Tree. In addition to that, we have money at Star Ohio, which is kind of the government pool of money. It doesn't offer as much and it's not as diverse, but it does give us interest. And then the athletics has a scholarship, the Hackham Humble Scholarship, that money is set aside. It has its own separate account at Star that gets interest on. Obviously, like you said, there's only like $30,000 there, so we're averaging around $2 to $3 a month. It's not a lot, but they do have it separate there. So this is just kind of everything in a nutshell together, and then it shows the previous months. And then the last thing is the January reconciliation. So this is just kind of part of the process of what I go through in order for us to balance. So you'll look at that financial summary report, kind of shows the balance that was at the end of the last month. Our receipts, this is inclusive of every fund. So kind of mashing together that LFI, that OFCC local share, and the all funds total is that. So those are the receipts, those are the expenditures, that was our ending balance. Over to the right is our bank balances, basically. So our general account at Huntington, and then all of our investment accounts there, and those balances. And then the adjustments at the bottom are mostly our outstanding checks for both payroll and or accounts payable. Some outstanding NSF checks, perhaps, that have come through. Other adjustments can be any number of things. It's usually things in transit to the bank or to we haven't receipted yet. So like pay schools for one, every month there's always, it may post in our system, but it doesn't get deposited in the bank till like the first, of the month, the next month. And so there's always that transition, or something in payroll is wired out, but it doesn't hit our bank until the first of the month, but we've already expensed it on our books type thing. So that's typically what all of those are. And then at the bottom, it just kind of shows our checks, And then the rec lead is really those reduced expenditure report, kind of shows, and then it'll match our total expenditures up at the top. And then the right is payroll, which is included in all of those numbers you see at the top as expenditure. So this is not in addition to anything. This is part of those expenditures each month. This is just kind of breaking down payroll by itself and their outstanding checks, because their checks are in a different program. So the accounts payable and the payroll are separate programs, and they don't cross over into like the same thing. So that is everything there, and I think I went through them all.
Any questions or comments
Sure
for
did.
Ms. Joycoy?
I just have one question.
Uh-huh.
When you're going through the reports, they're labeled with the reports with the graphs, and after athletics is food service, but it's like 006. Will that always be how that's coded, as 006, and then?
No, I thought maybe I will change it. I thought I changed it at one point to food service. Maybe I only changed the title. That's the fund that so food service is fund 006.
Okay, and then the all funds is coded as 001 as well. They're both.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so and that's general fund is just 001. So I'll change those so that when you're looking at them,
Thank you.
it shows that.
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer.
Aye.
Ms. White.
Aye.
Ms. Coco.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye. Item 2, comments. Ms. Joycoy?
I think I said enough.
I have one question for you. Has our audit been released?
No, not
Yeah,
yet.
okay.
It should be. It just last week I got the notification I could submit it. It goes through. It's not really an extra process, but because we have an independent auditor, they get done. They give it to the state auditor, who then has to review it and make sure everything looks okay, and then it gets out there. So I just got that at the end of last week for us to certify all parties to sign off. So I would expect it within the next week or two. I keep looking. It's not this week, but I'm expecting next week or the week after. I'm hoping that it'll be out and available publicly. Yes.
Thank you. On to item G, Superintendent CEO's business, consent agenda, Mr. Shabby.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the superintendent's business.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I wanted to highlight a couple things. I know there's a lot in this, but just a few things that I think are worth highlighting. One is the appointment of a lead technology support specialist. In talking with Mr. Hutch, he talked about how this change in his department will allow him to focus more on instructional technology and free him up to think more about how we can use technology in our classrooms more than we are now. And since he's not here, I can say this, perhaps have those maker spaces happen as we're starting to get out of the pandemic. We had put those on pause, but I know we've got money for maker spaces. Maybe that's something, hint to him, that he could start working on, because I know that's something important. I want to highlight just not always exciting things, but redoing 2 elevators at 2 of our buildings, something that Mr. Bugatti brought up. That's so important because I know it's something we hear often about, the reliability of those systems and how it impacts students' abilities to have access to learning and access to the same opportunities. So it's not always the most exciting contract, but I think it's really important and good work. And then Dr. Cruz brought an expansion of the K-5 Literacy Committee to make sure that everyone that's involved in K-5 learning, whatever their role might be, somebody from that is represented there. I think that's really important and exciting work as well. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things on that lengthy list so that they don't go unnoticed. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Item H, Superintendent CO's business. Mr. Shabady, your comments, please.
I just want to mention that the cabinet and I had a very unique opportunity today to go bowling, I guess you could say. We didn't really bowl, but we went out to, I think it's called Clutch Lanes out there on Route 8. And today our MH students from Cuyahoga Falls High School had an opportunity to interact with the MH students from Woodridge High School in a bowling. It really wasn't a contest. It was just a socialization type thing, but it's really cool. Woodridge has started this program where they begin to have flag football and soccer, and today was bowling, and we were the first ones to get to go. Unfortunately, we left. I guess right after we left, about 10 former NFL players came to support the program. I did get the picture though, but we had just left. But it was really neat to see our kids and our teacher out there, and those students interacting with each other. So it was just a neat little trip there. I'd also just like to mention, and maybe one of you have this. If you do, I apologize. But our boys bowling team just recently won the Suburban League Championship. And one of our students bowled a 300 game. We may have to have him in to recognize him one day. But just wanted to let you know that was going on. And again, in regards to the mask going optional after the President's Day, there was a lot of input from many people and a lot of research and a lot of time spent on that. And we just think with our numbers over the last 3 weeks, that's the right move to make at this time. So I just want to let you know that. And that's all I have.
Can you talk a little bit about how we're going to communicate that out to make sure that gets to people?
Well, if Christy quits talking, I will make an announcement tonight. I don't want to go too late, but in the next day or two, there'll be a major announcement going
Well,
out.
you should be blaming Joe.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, on to item I, board business, comments from the public. We did have one person that signed up to speak tonight on a topic not on the agenda, but I do not see Major Mackey here. He did submit to us kind of what he did want to discuss, so we were still able to see that. Item 2, future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items? I'll highlight a few things that I know of that are coming down the pike, just so we're all kind of aware. At our next meeting, Mrs. McClure is going to talk us through what her department does, give us that discussion about onboarding as well. And then we talked as well that it might be beneficial to kind of work our way through the different administrative departments. So we'll start with Mrs. McClure because that was on our radar. And then, we'll probably end with Dr. Cruz's team because it's the biggest. So it'll take the most time to work through. But Mr. Hutch and Mr. Bugatti have smaller departments. So try to get people in so that we can familiarize ourselves with them and understand a little bit more about what they do. We also have, in April, we're going to have a presentation on the 612 literacy program. I don't know which meeting that'll be at, but we'll get to that. And then I believe in April, after the second administration of the panorama, we'll have that brought to the board. And then next month as well, we're going to have a conversation about strategic planning goal monitoring, because this summer we will get in touch with OE Strategies that did our strategic plan. Part of that contract was after year 3 they would come back in. So I'd like us to pull those strategic plans out for the second meeting in March and have a conversation about where we're at before we bring them in. So that's what I have, little coming events. Item 3, committee reports. Up for 612 construction core team, Ms. White.
We will meet tomorrow at 1.
Alliance for School and Community Growth, Ms. Coco.
We were able to meet last week for the first time with myself as part of the committee and as Mr. Shabady. he was able to present an update on our 6 through 12 buildings, and then I presented information on the upcoming levy as well. And it was kind of just all went around the room and had a lot of introductions because we're new and got to know each other. And so we're looking forward to working with everyone that was there and hopefully bringing in even more people from the community. And our next meeting will be March 8th.
Thank you. Athletics and Activity Council, Mrs. Schaefer.
We are scheduled for March 14th.
Okay. Board Policy Committee, myself and Ms. White.
We need to make a date.
We had to cancel our meeting because 2 of the 5 people for the meeting were down for the count. So unfortunately, we had to cancel it for
Sorry about that.
legitimate reasons. So we'll
Very
be looking
sorry
to
about
reschedule that soon.
Yeah.
Business Advisory Council, Mr. Harris and Ms. Coco.
February 22nd. So next week we will have our meeting.
Financial Advisory Committee, Mrs. Schaefer.
We are meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow.
Foundation Alumni Association, that's me. We met last week. Want to let you know that on May 9th at 7 p.m. at the Cuyahoga Falls High School Auditorium, we will have our program where we will award scholarships. The students only know up to that point. The seniors will know that they got a scholarship. They find out which scholarship they get that night at the program. And we'll also honor 3 distinguished alumni, which we're waiting for them to get notified before I can announce them. But we're also going to give out a Distinguished Service Award to Miss Karen Schofield. So mark your calendars for that. We are still doing new members can sign up or renew. We have more members already than we did last year, but we still have more members that we know will be coming in. Wink, wink, hint, hint. If and when you become a member, this is the folder you're going to get this year, and that's the original 1922 front entrance of our high school. So it's the 100th anniversary of that this year. So we found a nice picture, and it's a nice keepsake. You're also going to get a jar opener, which is always handy.
Amy wants to join.
I've already joined it.
Amy's mad.
When do we get the jars?
Probably April. We'll mail out the folder. A jar holder. We thought
I
it would be a nice.
signed up. Friday from Wellness. I didn't even know, and I'm
But
already
we're gonna give out around 55 scholarships this year. We're extremely proud of that. And at our next meeting, we're gonna talk about expanding to make sure that we're offering financial assistance to those that might be going into 2-year programs. Right now, we're focused more on people going to 4-year university, but we know that that's not the path to success for all of our students. We want to make sure that we're finding ways to support students that go through other paths but could still need our financial assistance. And I think it's important to note that Matthew Stafford, who, as you may have known, won a Super Bowl, his father, John Stafford, is a 1965 graduate of Cuyahoga Falls High School and grew up on Whitelaw. So you never know what you or your family could go on to do if you're an alumni of Cuyahoga Falls High School.
But for sure, you're getting a can opener.
Are there any numbers yet for the teacher grants, or do we know?
Those are still open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Legislative Liaison, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I don't have too much. Some recently introduced legislation, House Bill 554, which required the State Board of Education to issue 2-year temporary educator licenses to applicants with expired professional teacher certificates and professional educator licenses, as long as certain requirements are met. Senate Bill 280, that requires the State Teachers Retirement Board to reinstate the cost of living adjustment beginning July 1st, 2022. And just a quick update, the State Board of Education is still working to implement the new state report card rules. I think they have until March 31st, 2022 to adopt those. So I'll keep you guys in the loop.
All right, thank you. Student Achievement Liaison, Ms. White.
Unfortunately, for the same reason I couldn't attend the one meeting, I couldn't attend this one.
I believe
I think
Mrs.
Ms.
Schaefer
Schaefer went
attended in your place. Do you have anything you want to report on district leadership team?
Not much, though. Since I stepped into it, I was kind of unaware of the other things that were happening.
I have to say that it was really, though, impressive, because when the teachers were talking about their data and data supported, data driven, it's not just we're teaching, it was really impressive. It was very impressive. They had the passion and the data. It was very cool. I'm glad I got an opportunity to be in that.
Thank you for going last minute. I know.
Student Wellness and Success Liaison, that's me. Want to update you, I updated you. We're going to administer the Panorama survey again in March. Do I have that right? So we'll probably have a little bit of a presentation just to know what we're talking about in terms of the questions. And then in April, like I said, we'll get some of that data and be able to dig deeper into the realities of that. I also want to just highlight some things that are going on in our buildings to support student wellness and success. Bullock Middle School took all of the 8th graders just to take 2 hours out of the day to do some building of community with one another, and they went sledding on the hill right next door to them. And I think sometimes when we talk about student wellness and success, we don't always understand what that means, but that's a great example of just these kids that spend all of this time together, but have only been in middle school in the times of a pandemic, to just get to have some fun like a middle schooler should. So I think that's commendable. I also want to commend my fellow Board of Education members, because as we had that second big snowstorm, we had some issues with snow getting cleared up, and working together collectively, we were able to get Acme on State Road to clear their sidewalks for our students at Richardson, as well as to reach out to the city to make sure that a path over Portage Trail was cleared for our high school students. So that was good work supporting the wellness of our students by my colleagues up here as well. Now, on to comments. Up first tonight is Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I was actually going to mention that to Mr. Gomez, so I just wanted to thank you all for working to get those pathways cleared. I know I mentioned that last time. As always, I want to congratulate our top Tigers and also our 2 Scholastic art competition winners. Dr. Cruz, you had mentioned that you have those pieces of artwork, pictures of those. Could you send those to us so I could see those?
I will, and I'm working with Caitlin from Impact Group to get those in
Awesome.
a post as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd love to
Yep,
see them.
I
I'd love to see
will.
those.
They're pretty awesome.
Perfect. And then lastly, and Mr. Gomez, I'm just going to echo what you said earlier. Ms. Johnson and the transportation folks are doing a heck of a job for us given the situation. So we were actually, Mr. Bugatti and the other members of our group were actually in a planning meeting for this presentation, and she had to hop off to go drive a bus. So I was just blown away by that, and I really appreciate her dedication and hard work. So thank you.
Mrs. Schaefer.
This past week, I continued to learn more about things that I don't know about. I spent some time in the warehouse last week, and that was very cool. And all of the components that are the people that are working out of that building. And I also got to meet with Ms. Carlisle and Mrs. Culver from CFEA, and we got to talk about what the union does and how the union works in local and state. Got a lot of great information. Got some good feedback from them. I really thought it was a great positive meeting, so I'm excited for the future. Thank you.
Ms. White? She's getting ready for a long article.
I'm not. You know I have one, but I won't keep you that long. 4 principles for assessing student-directed projects. And I really think this could be used a lot more besides projects, but assessment should recognize the individuality of the learner, illuminate the learning process, engage multiple perspectives, cultivate capacity for personal judgment. Now, a lot of people said that the goal should be determine what is personally meaningful for each student, while acknowledging the potential variability of the work that different students will produce. In English language arts classrooms, students are often asked to produce open-ended work that is grounded in personal perspectives, interests, and experiences. Also, teachers often involve learners in articulating their own goals and aspirations for the work and in designing assessment criteria. And I think, to me, that's really, really important, getting them involved and then self-assessment. To me, that's how you learn. And usually what they do is give a parameter of what they're going to produce. How they actually do it then is up to the students. But then when you assess them, did you do what you said you were going to do? These were your goals. Did you meet those goals? And how do you feel about it? What do you think? How could you improve? That kind of thing. And I think that is so very important that our students learn how to do that. So recognizing and supporting learners as individuals requires teachers to attend to not only what students create, but also how they create it. For example, professional visual artists, writers, and craftspeople often describe their work as an ongoing process. And within those fields, regular feedback and revision tend to be viewed as essential practices. And also involving their peers, students' peers. When they offer feedback, the process can benefit everyone involved. Learning how to assess others' work can inform students about what to look for in their own creations, helping them develop the ability to critically self-assess. Engaging with their peers' work can also expose students to various solutions and strategies that they may not encounter otherwise. The ultimate goal of student assessment is the development of self-assessment skills. Seeing assessment as learning, not as a one-time judgment of students' knowledge and skill, but as a personal, interactive, and involving conversation that helps students make their own decisions about what to do next. When learners see assessment as part of their own growth and development, rather than as a performance for someone else to judge, they are more likely to take risks, seek out challenges, and persevere in the face of difficulty. So I just think it's important that we give students some of that ability to self-assess quite regularly. So, see?
Thank you. Ms. Coco?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo first a congratulations to our 2 art award recipients and our top tigers. It is, I think, one of our favorite parts of our meetings is the top tigers. And, you know, the elementary, we alternate between the elementary students and the secondary. And the elementary students come in, these little K through 5, cute, and they all come in and we're all, oh, they're so cute. But I want to say my favorite is the secondary, to see these students continuing to show Black Tiger pride and show success through. Middle school is not easy, high school is not easy, and seeing those kids up here just really makes me proud to be a part of this district. So congratulations to all of them. Just a reminder that there is no school for students this Friday and next Monday for President's Day. This Friday is a teacher PD day, and on that note, I just want to say thank you to our teachers, and we appreciate you, and we know that it's been really rough this year, so thank you for everything that you do. My teenage daughter decided this week as part of the 6th District Compact to go into the teaching program, specifically because of the difference teachers have made for her. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
that's it.
I'm up last. I'll just report out my state committee that I used to run through the Ohio School Boards Association that call ourselves the Black Caucus, but our mission is to advocate for all diverse students and to serve as a way for diverse school board members to come together and have discussions. We had a 45-minute presentation from somebody from the Ohio Department of Education on the different changes they're making to the state report card. And we talked about this a little bit because the State Board of Education has met for over 16 hours to debate and discuss these changes to the state report card. And then she gave us a shortened 45-minute presentation. So we talked about how do we take this and make it meaningful for our average family? Because we know that people are aware of these report card readings. How do we make this actually something that they can care about and put value in? So they are actually working on a piece of that, and there's going to be opportunities throughout the process to give feedback, because they are coming up with like a translation guide for families on what does this mean, what are other things you should look at in your district other than the report card. So I thought that was interesting, and I think it's important as they talk about those changes. But so remember, part of that is creating these cut scores. And so it's designed about, they're going from letters to stars, but 3 stars, which would be a C, is how they're designing it. That's where you're supposed to fall. And if you're doing really bad, according to whatever they decide that means, you fall lower than that. But if you're doing really good, you fall above that. But the reality is, nobody appreciates the fact that they designed this entire system so everybody falls in the middle and gets a C. So just my impassion about how they do these things. They're debating these cut scores, and you know how many people are part of the cut scores means they are deciding how many schools are allowed to even be in the top tier. So it doesn't matter even if 50 schools say tied, they might have decided that only 40 schools can be in that top tier. So 10 schools that could have the same score as these other districts automatically have to be bumped down because they're only allowing so many schools to fall in each category. I think it's important to know. I do think there is valuable information that can be gleaned from that, but it does take a lot of effort to dig deeper to really appreciate what goes into that. I want to also highlight DeWitt and Silver Lake, who are doing Behavior Olympics, tying in with the Olympics. And at Silver Lake, every classroom was assigned a different country, and those countries were determined based on countries of origin from different students that go to Silver Lake. And I thought that was really something wonderful that should be highlighted. So that is all for tonight. And now for item J, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye. See you all tomorrow.
Yeah.
I know.
Different time,
Right.
different place.
Different time. Yeah. But I'll be there.
I was about to say, next time you guys see me, I'll have a really nice tan, but you're right.
No, gosh.
That's right. That's right.
Jeez, just